Раз. Раз.
Dear participants, we will start in 1 minute, so I kindly remind you to take your seat. Шановні учасники, ми розпочнемо за 1 хвилину, тому я нагадую про необхідність зайняти свої місця. Дякую. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome His Excellency President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, and His Excellency President of Latvia, Egils Levis.
Специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей.
I'm invited to the stage Prosecutor General Andrei Kostin.
I'm happy to welcome all of you here. It's a great pleasure to see all of you, all of these people with whom we've been working shoulder to shoulder since the very beginning of this full-scale aggression. We are grateful for your support and the decisiveness, for your belief in Ukraine. That is why we have gathered today on the free Ukrainian soil. All of us are combined with a single purpose. We are united for victory. We are united for justice. At the same time, the final victory will only take place when Russia, that has committed the worst international felony, that is the crime of aggression, will take responsibility, and only the irreversibility of the punishment for the international crimes committed will provide the peace and stability in the world. I am convinced that today no one has any doubts about the fact of the crime of aggression being committed, and that means there could be no compromises as to the full responsibility for these crimes committed. This is why we've gathered today. The unique feature of our conference is that we shall be discussing all the components of the overarching accountability, and not only will be discussing, but will also be planning the actions required to restore the justice. We're also taking practical steps to the development of the global and overarching architecture for the responsibility for international crimes committed. Just today, we've signed a memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of Justice of the United States and the member nations of the Joint Investigative Team. And today, in just a couple of minutes, we will have the first session of the dialogue group that will ensure an international support to investigating crimes committed by Russia against Ukraine. And today, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine has approved the memoranda between the government of Ukraine and International Criminal Court that would soon allow to establish the prosecutor office in Ukraine, the prosecutor of the ICC. Now, that would allow the prosecutor of the ICC to be able to investigate the crimes committed in Ukraine to the full extent. At the same time, there is no legal mechanisms that would allow ICC to bring to responsibility all those who have planned, initiated this unprovoked war. That is the supreme leadership of Russia. And for this purpose, we do need the establishment of the special special tribunal. And the first practical step will also be made here, together with Eurojustice, with the European Commission and the member nations of the Joint Investigative Team. Together, we are establishing an international center for prosecuting the crime of aggression in Hague. Tomorrow, we'll be signing the agreement as part of the Joint Investigative Team, and we hope that this center that will collect the evidences to the crime of aggression will start its operation in Hague this summer. Our way is not easy. It's a lengthy path, but still it's important that we are on this path. A year ago, the world has been debating whether Ukraine will be able to defend itself. Today in Lviv, we are talking about the formative tribunal over Putin, and I believe that this is an inevitable progress in our united achievement, but our joint purpose is not only to bring justice for all those responsible for the crimes of this war, but also to rebuild the system of the international law and order that would be based on the principles of justice and effective instruments of the international law and order. This is our common responsibility to all those affected by the Russian aggression. This is our common responsibility to all those expecting for justice to happen. This is our common responsibility to the upcoming generation, to the next generations. United, together, we will achieve this purpose. So, we are united for victory.
United for justice.
And now, it is an honor for me to give the floor to an individual that throughout this year, together with Ukraine, and was standing together with every single Ukrainian in Ukraine, who's a true leader of the Ukrainian nation and a symbol of its invincibility, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief and the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you. Every shot that takes an innocent life should result in a lawful and fair sentence that punishes for committing a murder. Every violence that destroys a person's life should result in a lawful and fair judgment that protects the dignity of the person. Now, these are fundamentals for civilized and democratic countries, for countries where the rule of law is strictly enforced. But the time has come to make this fundamental for international relations, the fundamentals that would apply globally and inevitably to any violator of the international law. Besides, when it comes to the crime of aggression, the world needs the true embodiment of the rule of law that it will surely ensure that the humanity is protected against the right of force being as the source for all aggressions. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, First Ladies, dear guests, these numerous words in conventions and other international treaties in defense of people and humanity, they must become a very concrete legal decisions and actions. The noble intention of the creators of international law must be reflected in the energy of international justice. Now, in response to all the crimes and injustices caused by Russia's aggression against the state of Ukraine and against the civilized world order, have to take place. So there has to be these steps for the sake of a single result that will unite the whole world, that would testify the reality of the rule of international law. Namely, Vladimir Putin and all of his accomplices must receive legal and fair sentences for everything they've committed in the name and memory of all those whose lives they've taken, whose life they've destroyed for the aggression they've started. The world must respond to Russian aggression and terror with full force of the common heritage of our peoples. Law is one of the key elements of the strengths of human culture. Any revenge is not able to do what the law can do. The law is able to ensure not only the prosecution of perpetrators or criminals for the crimes they've committed. This includes the perpetrators of the most serious crime, the crime that gives rise to all other crimes of war and genocide, the crime of aggression. The law can eliminate even the hypothetical possibility of a sense of impunity for those who are capable of launching terrorist wars. The true rule of law at the global level and this effective international justice will protect the world from these sort of wars and their terrible consequences. Now, what has this year of Russian terrorist war brought to Ukraine? Just 1 year, we've already registered over 70,000 Russian war crimes, but we are not aware of all the crimes. A significant part of our territory is unfortunately still occupied at this moment, and we cannot currently predict how many Russian crimes we will identify after expelling the occupying forces. However, it is clear how serious those crimes are, what is the scale of the criminal manifestations of Russian aggression. We remember everything. We remember Bucha and the actions by the Russian soldiers. We remember the village of Yahidne in Chernihiv region and this actual concentration camp that was created in the basement of the village school. For weeks, they've kept over 300 people in there. It could be elderly, it could be children. They were kept in the crowd, in dark. We remember the numerous abuses and rapes of adults and children that has forever changed the world's view and attitude towards the real Russia. We remember that fleeing from Ukrainian land, the occupiers were leaving behind the torture chambers and graves. We remember the thousands of terrorist attacks with missiles, thousands of drone attacks against our people. We remember the dozens of cities and villages of Ukraine burned by Russia. So we can predict what else we may face upon returning the temporarily occupied territories of our country, upon returning to Mariupol, to Volnovakha, to Olenivka, and dozens of other cities and settlements where Russia has brought death and suffering. We are yet to reveal to the world the full truth about the atrocities committed by occupiers in Ukraine. We need to prepare a full range of tools, both nationally and internationally, in order to ensure that justice would work towards all the aspects of Russian aggression, towards all those responsible for this aggression. Now we have data on thousands of civilian victims by Russian attack, thousands, but it's obvious that the occupiers took much more lives of our people. Surely we all realize this. We want to punish the terrorist state. Now, this is the moral and legal duty of the world to the victims of Russian terror. And this is a security duty of the civilized and democratic world to any nation that might be threatened by aggression like Russia's aggression. Fellow participants, I ask you to have a minute of silence in memory of all Ukrainians who have been killed by Russian aggression, in memory of every Ukrainian soldier who gave his or her life to stop Russian evil. I thank you. Please take your seats. Today, we're here in Lviv with the President of Latvia, and who's a very experienced lawyer, Mr. Egils Levits. We have the First Lady, the Vice Prime Minister of the Government of Netherlands, a country which is one of the world leaders in protecting the justice and international law, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, who vigorously and professionally defends Europe and the international order. We have the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Mr. Karim Khan, who is also the European Commissioner for Justice and the President of Eurojust. We have Attorneys General and Ministers of Justice, special representatives of partner countries from Europe, UK, and US. We have legal community from Ukraine and many countries of the world. Now, thanks to this Lviv conference, thanks to you all, we can establish a new format for international cooperation for the sake of justice. It was in Lviv that the prominent figures have been educated and worked, like Raphael Lemkin, the creator of the concept of genocide as a crime, studied and worked, who helped to define international norms for the prevention and punishment of genocide. Then the name of Harsh Lauterpacht, he was one of the most famous architects of the modern system of international law, is also associated with Lviv. Louis Zon, another prominent personality whose work we see today in the existence of the UN institutions and international justice. He also studied and worked in Lviv. Today's meeting here in Lviv has a solid historical background, a solid scientific and legal foundation. Now we have to make, and we will make, another Lviv's contribution to the international law, another Ukrainian contribution to international justice. Here and now, we are taking the comprehensive process to a new level, and it will result in sentences to those responsible for Russian aggression. The first thing we have to achieve is our unity for justice. Now, that should become a powerful impetus the powerful impetus should be brought by a resolution of UN General Assembly on the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of Russian aggression against Ukraine. The tribunal will be this link that will solve the problem of the International Criminal Court's inability to prosecute for committing the crime of aggression. The ICC office is opening in Ukraine, is opening an office in Ukraine, and this is something that the Prosecutor General has already mentioned. This would further reinforce our cooperation with the ICC, who will help us bring to accountability the citizens of the terrorist state, those guilty of committing the crimes within the jurisdiction of the ICC. Particular attention should be paid to the crimes which are committed or being committed by Russia against Ukrainian children. We're talking about the deportation of children, the abductions, and the attempts to erase the national and family identity of our children. The national justice system and all of its institutions must work at their full capacity. We understand that most of the Russian crimes on Ukrainian soil and against Ukrainian citizens will receive a fair response within our national jurisdiction, and I thank everyone who's clearly assisting with the implementation of each and every of these three large-scale tasks. In Lviv, we have to identify the priorities for our work. Then, from the standpoint of doctrine, terminology, politics, and practical aspects, we have to answer how to be flawless in taking this path and bringing the Russian occupiers to justice, all the way from collecting evidences and identifying each of the perpetrators to passing the verdicts to making sure that decisions are actually made and there is justice for our people, for all the victims of Russian aggression, and for the whole world. Now, let we identify everything that we still need in order to say with certainty that the murderers have been punished, the dignity and honor of people have been protected, the damage has been compensated, and the justice has won. And I wish all of us fruitful work. I thank you for your attention, and please remember what allows us to keep the unity for the sake of the most important, for the justice. Every person matters. Every life matters for us. Glory to all those people, all those notable, very important people who are defending Ukraine and international order at the legal front lines. I would like to express words of gratitude to you, and glory to all those who are currently fighting for Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. It is an honor for me to pass the floor to the President of Latvia, His Excellency Egils Levits. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency President Zelensky, distinguished lawyers, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Prosecutor General Andrei Kostin for inviting me to this crucial conference. Ukraine continues the military fight on the battlefield. Ukraine must and will win. Russia will lose and be held accountable for the crime of aggression, the gravest crime in international law, the mother crime. Our task is in this conference to prepare for bringing Russia to account. We will discuss the various options on why one of the options is better than the other option. I have 24 years of experience as a judge in international courts. And like I say, that they are all better than doing nothing. Silence from the international community, from international law, would be a green light to every dictator in the world, to every terrorist. It would be the wrong signal. Also, we must do something to bring Russia to account. I have also experience as a Latvian, whose country experienced occupation, killings, deportations, dictatorship by Russia for 50 years. Justice never came for our victims. It never came also for the victims of Ukrainian Holodomor. So today, we can change this pattern. We must finally hold Russia accountable for its crimes. From the Russian leadership to every Russian soldier who kills, rapes, loots, destroys. Later, we will discuss the appropriate mechanisms for bringing Russia to account. The legal community is creative. We not only refer to precedents, but we create them. We created special international tribunals for Rwanda, for Lebanon, for former Yugoslavia, amongst others. We created the Nuremberg Tribunal by only 4 states, but with a huge impact to the development of international law. This is legally possible. All what is now required is the political will. I am encouraged by the growing political will, by the growing momentum to create a special international tribunal. For example, by the European Parliament in its resolution of the 19th January and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in its resolution of the 26th of January this year. Both institutions, which are representing the democratic states in Europe and their peoples, clearly support such a special tribunal. Also, there is a growing political will in Europe, in the West. Outside Europe, outside the West, we politicians still have work to do. The so-called global South is quite diverse. Some are under political and economic pressure from Russia. Some see the war as a local European problem with an element of Schadenfreude. However, there is hope, as the recent votes in the United Nations General Assembly show. The world is slowly losing its fear from Russia. Ukraine has lost all fear. Now Russia must be afraid for the crimes it has committed. Dear friends and colleagues, the next panel would examine the various global accountability mechanisms in place or under consideration to ensure justice for atrocity crimes. The war of aggression started by Russia presents existential threats to international peace and security and the rules-based international order. Such behavior must be met with the most determined response so that the signal is clear: aggression towards or military invasion of another sovereign state is not tolerated. We commend Ukraine for its skills in using all available mechanisms under international law to respond to Russia's aggression and assure state responsibility and individual liability. The use of this mechanism reaffirms their relevance and proves that international law has tools to respond to the breaches of international law. At present, 3 international mechanisms have already started to evaluate Russia's state responsibility. First, Ukraine is seeking a determination by the International Court of Justice that Russia has distorted the so-called Genocide Convention from 1948 and used the false claims of genocide being committed in Ukraine as a pretext for the military invasion. Latvia is a state party to the Genocide Convention and has a genuine interest to the interpretation of this convention regarding abusive allegations of genocide. For this reason, Latvia has submitted to the ICJ a declaration intervening as a third party in this case. Second, Ukraine has submitted an interstate application to the European Court of Human Rights and seeks determination by this court that Russia has violated the European Convention on Human Rights. Latvia is intervening as a third party in this case as well. And third, the issue of compensation of damages inflicted by Russia. We note that work on the creation of the Register of Damages, as well as efforts to establish a legal basis for the use of frozen Russian assets for the reconstruction of Ukraine and for reparations to Ukraine. Turning to the individual liability. In parallel to the state responsibility, individual liability for the most serious crimes of international concern must also be ensured. The international community has conferred the jurisdiction over these crimes, crime of aggression, war crimes, crime against humanity and genocide, to the International Criminal Court in Hague. We consider the International Criminal Court as a major achievement in international law, and we pledge for our full support to the ICC. Latvia has provided voluntary financial contribution to the International Criminal Court, has seconded experts, and is looking for other ways to assist the International Criminal Court. However, we must admit that because of the way the amendments of the International Criminal Court statute, so-called Rome Statute, regarding the crime of aggression are drafted, the International Criminal Court cannot exercise its jurisdiction over this crime if committed by Russian nationals. Therefore, currently, no international mechanism can exercise jurisdiction over the crime of aggression committed now against Ukraine. This is unacceptable. The crime of aggression is a source of other core international crimes currently being investigated by the International Criminal Court. And therefore, this gap must be closed. Two conclusions follow. First, we must close this gap for the future, and therefore think of amending the Rome Statute, the Statute of International Criminal Court, to this effect. Second, and most importantly, we must close this gap with respect to the crime committed now against Ukraine. Already on the 2nd March 2022, the United Nations General Assembly condemned Russia's aggression against Ukraine, thus determining that there has been an aggression. Therefore, we must create a legitimate mechanism to ensure accountability for this crime of aggression against Ukraine. Throughout history, the international community has always found creative and innovative ways to address atrocity crimes in order to ensure accountability and the rule of law. Together, we have created international tribunals for crimes committed during the Second World War in former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, etc. These tribunals did great work by investigating and adjudicating war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and crimes against peace. In some ways, our current task is easier. We need a new solution for addressing only one crime. We already have an internationally agreed definition of that crime of aggression. In other ways, this task is more complex, both legally and politically. Historically, two types of special tribunals can be identified: international tribunals and hybrid tribunals. The International Criminal Court for the former Yugoslavia, for example, was international tribunal, and extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, for example, it could be regarded as hybrid tribunal. But we cannot copy all these precedents. We can certainly draw inspirations from them, but we cannot copy. We should create something new. We should develop international law. This is a time for developing of international law in the case of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. It must be also recalled that the crime of aggression is a leadership crime. Therefore, any mechanism we create for the crime of aggression must be able to ensure accountability of the Russian leadership. This inevitably raises the questions of immunities and whether there are ways to create a legal basis for legitimate exceptions to the personal immunities to the top state leadership. In this regard, the conclusion of the International Court of Justice in the arrest warrant case regarding possible exceptions from personal immunities could serve as guidance. Latvia, alongside other like-minded states, believes that an ad hoc international tribunal under the auspices of the United Nations can ensure accountability of the Russian leadership. Drawing from precedents, we suggest to establish an ad hoc international tribunal by concluding an agreement between the UN Secretary General and Ukraine based on a UN General Assembly resolution, as it was done in the case of Cambodia. We consider that it would be possible, since the UN General Assembly has determined that there has been an act of aggression by Russia, and the International Court of Justice in its case law has previously concluded that the UN General Assembly has certain competence regarding the maintenance of peace and security. Nevertheless, we should not forget also other possibilities. I will not go deeper into that. But first, we should try through the General Assembly of the United Nations. An international tribunal created under the auspices of the United Nations would provide the strongest international legitimacy and would allow exemptions from personal immunities in line with ICJ and ICC case law. All we need for the creation of such a tribunal and for ensuring full accountability is determination and political will. Finally, we must bear in mind that Belarus has also allowed Russia to use its territory to perpetrate an act of aggression against Ukraine. We therefore must also address the accountability of Belarus. Dear friends and colleagues, the establishment of such a special tribunal is needed for two reasons. First, it is necessary in order to do justice for Ukraine. And second, this is necessary in order not to damage the standard of international law already reached in 1945 by UN Charter, which forbids aggressive wars. In such a case, the world would fall back into military anarchy. No one wants to live in such a world. Therefore, establishing of such a tribunal is in the interest not only for Ukraine, but of the whole international community, for the whole world. Thank you for your attention.
Distinguished participants, now we will watch a special video appeal from the President of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Russia's invasion has brought unspeakable suffering to Ukraine. Almost 1 year ago, the world discovered the horrors of Bucha. I was there myself, and I have witnessed the atrocities committed by Russian forces. There is increasing evidence of direct attacks against civilians, as well as on energy and other infrastructure, torture, ill treatment, sexual violence, and summary executions are known to have been committed by Russian forces. Not even children are being spared. Russia must be held accountable for these horrific crimes, and Putin must be held accountable. We must do everything in our power to bring the perpetrators to justice. The European Union is supportive of the role of the International Criminal Court. We also believe that there needs to be a dedicated tribunal to prosecute Russia's crime of aggression. And I'm proud that at this conference in Lviv, as a first step, you will sign the agreement to set up the International Center for Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression in The Hague. The European Union will continue to work with our partners to ensure that Russia pays. We stand united for justice for Ukraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Wopke Hoekstra, Deputy Prime Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. President, Madam First Lady, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. For more than 1 year now, you have defended yourself against the unwarranted, unprovoked and illegal Russian invasion of your country. And in the face of violence and injustice, you stood firm and you continue to do so. And to all of us, that is a source of tremendous admiration. As last week's vote in the UN General Assembly made clear, the vast majority of the world and the countries in the world stands firmly with you. And we will support you. The Netherlands will continue to support you for as long as is necessary in your fight for freedom, sovereignty and justice. And it is this last ideal, justice, that has brought us here together today. I'm an admirer of Cicero, who once observed that in times of war, the law falls silent. But here, the ancient master of oratory was clearly wrong. 2 millennia later, 2 lawyers from Lviv have shown that it shouldn't. Raphael Lemkin, who invented the legal concept of genocide, and helped create the Genocide Convention, lived and studied here. As did Hersch Lauterpacht, who developed the legal concept of crimes against humanity and helped to prosecute war criminals in Nuremberg. 2 of the truly foundational ideas in international justice. Very clumsy. I hope they don't broadcast it. As did Hersch Lauterpacht, and I'll repeat him and honor his name, who developed the legal concept of crimes against humanity and helped to prosecute war criminals in Nuremberg. 2 of the truly foundational ideas in international justice come from this city. And today's proceedings are surely inspired by their legacy, because the law does not fall silent. The law does not fall silent in times of war. There can be no peace without justice or without accountability. And that is true everywhere, and especially here after everything Russia has done on Ukrainian territory. The murders, the sexual violence, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, and the systematic abduction of Ukrainian children. Small children being kidnapped, brainwashed, and forced to become something they are not, Russian citizens. And Russia's invasion is not just a war, and it is an attempted colonization, an attack on Ukrainian identity. All its war crimes and crimes against humanity must be investigated, must be prosecuted in accordance with international standards. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an enormous task, and one we can only complete together. And I want to thank President Zelensky and Minister Kuleba and Prosecutor General Kostin for hosting us here today. We're in this with you together. and we will help you in any way we can. The ICC is making a strong effort to investigate the crimes committed here. The Netherlands is supporting these efforts by providing forensic teams. And we're also an active member of the core group on the establishment of a tribunal on the crime of aggression, as was just mentioned. We will host the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression in The Hague. And we will host a register of damages in consultation with Ukraine and with our European partners. And as we've said at last year's Ukraine Accountability Conference in The Hague, we are in this together. And there we discussed the need for increased coordination on accountability initiatives. 45 states have then expressed their political commitment to a dialogue group to achieve exactly this goal. To bring parties together, to exchange information, and to improve cooperation. And today I am proud to announce the official launch of this dialogue group, together with my colleagues from Ukraine, ICC Prosecutor Khan, EU Commissioner Reinders, and Eurojust President Hamran. And this group will provide states, international organizations, and civil society with a platform to discuss and update each other on national and international accountability initiatives, to strengthen coherence and identify needs and opportunities. And I would like to thank all parties involved for their commitment and their initiative who have not yet joined to participate in the dialogue group. Together, we can ensure that the law never falls silent. So please, let's make this work. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are slowly getting to an opening session of our conference, but before that, we will have one